Hello, Kako. How you folks doing? My name is Armando. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the unsolved murder of Lisa Au, and it's something that I remember very clearly because at that time, and that was in the early '80s, '82 to be exact. Um, a lot of people believe that it was somebody trying to or pretending to be a policeman that was stopping women and that type of thing, and that was the biggest fear. Um, Eventually, um, it got to the point where the police department had to, you know, ban putting just the blue lights on the grill. They had to now put it on the top of the car. So they changed their policy regarding that on the because a lot of policemen they use their own cars for um, rather than using patrol cars. My brother-in-law is a policeman too, and he actually had his own car, and he just put the blue light on the top of his car. So, but anyway, let's get started talking about Lisa Au. And I'll just give you a little background of who she was uh, and a little bit of history on her. Lisa Au was born on July 25th of 1962 to parents Chester Dennis Au and Patrice Mahiai Kalani Akim Au Kaum Namanu. So she had a rich cultural heritage from each of her parents. Chinese on her dad's side, and then Hawaiian on her mother's. So she's Hawaiian Chinese. Like a lot of people in Hawaii are pretty much Hawaiian Chinese mix. So in 1982, Lisa was 19 years old, and she stood at about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed about 120 pounds. She was very petite. So she had a long, wavy black hair and worked as a hairdresser. And according to everyone, her roommates, family, and friends, she was a very hard-working girl, responsible and conscientious and careful person. And she was excited for her future. And she just got her driver's license on January 18th of 1982. And then she vanished. So now the story begins on January 20th of 1982. It was a pouring rain that night on Oahu. Usually around January, that's the rainy season. That's just about now. It's a rainy season on Oahu, and rains a lot, almost every day. And that's when 19-year-old Lisa Au finished up work at the Susan Beers Salon in Kailua. So she worked there as a hairdresser. So as she was heading out the door into the bad weather, she told her co-workers there that she was going to see her boyfriend, Doug Holmes, at his sister's apartment in Makiki. Okay? Now, Lisa Au worked as a hairdresser at the Susan Beers Salon. Now, on her way, the police report showed that she stopped at a grocery store and she bought some poke, which is raw fish, and something that a lot of local people love to eat. Raw fish, and it's in different varieties. You can buy it, but basically it's like food, kind of like comfort food. But poke is very, very popular in Hawaii. Now, she had to drive from Kailua to the Mott Smith Danilo Apartments, which is on 1717 Mott Smith Drive. So that's about a half an hour drive from where she was. Okay, so now just before 11 o'clock, now Lisa and her boyfriend Doug Holmes, who was a student at UH Manoa, they were overheard by a security guard fighting, arguing. And the security guard, Thomas Thornburg, said at about 12:20 a.m. he saw Lisa jumping into her car. And then a few moments after, Doug Holmes is seen driving in his blue car and driving after Lisa. Okay? This would be the last night anybody would have seen Lisa Au. Okay? Now, after dinner, she headed home to Kailua. She never got there. Never made it to Kailua. The next day, her parents, Lisa Au's parents, called Holmes at his University of Hawaii dorm, and they said he told them that he would go out to look for her. They were very worried she was missing, and they were very thankful that he would go out and look for her. And it was Holmes who called police to report he'd found the car. And that was a 1976 Toyota parked along the shoulder of the highway in Manawili near the old Kailua Drive-In. I'm pretty familiar with that area because we used to go Kailua Drive-In a lot. But it was parked there. And now the driver's side window, strangely, the driver's side window was rolled down about halfway. And the officer who met Holmes noted that there was about 2 to 3 inches of water on the floorboards of the vehicle. So it was raining that night and the water got in the car because it was rolled down halfway, and then the seat was soaked and drenched. But oddly, Au's purse on the seat appeared to be completely dry. That was really strange. So the officer expressed concern that the purse may have been placed on the seat after the torrential rain had stopped. So he also reported seeing scratches on Holmes's face. That's a red flag right there. Take note of that one. Crime scene technicians would later determine that Au's car had been wiped clean of any evidence. Okay, so somebody wiped the evidence, wiped it clean. Word quickly spread of Au's disappearance, and thousands of flyers were distributed island-wide as her friends and family hoped against any hope that the teen would be found alive again. Now, in interviews with the media, Au's family struggled to thank the hundreds of volunteers searching for their daughter. And they said, "Thank you is not enough," said her exhausted mother, holding back tears. "Everyone wants to help so much. The support has just been great." So they were very thankful. And the search would go on for 10 grueling days, and then the worst was confirmed. On January 31st, 1982, Au's new decomposing body was found by a jogger and his dog in a ravine off Tantalus Drive. That was the day the case moved from missing persons unit to homicide detectives. And when the Honolulu Police Department's Bert Cornell would get involved. Okay, so he was involved in that case. Now, at the time, Cornell was the lieutenant assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division, or CID. Now, 37 years later, he's 72 years old, retired in Florida, and the Au case still plagues him. Okay, despite the passage of time, he said he remembers the case clearly and all the problems surrounding it. Days after Au's body was found, homicide detectives had a suspect, one of their own. Okay? So, and their theory became public, causing an island-wide panic. Women feared that a policeman was pulling over women to attack them. I remember that. I clearly remember that at that time. So, how did they come to suspect that an officer was involved? And why were they so focused on him? Okay, that's where the investigation was leading, that it was one of their own. Now, for about a year, an investigative grand jury heard evidence against the Honolulu police officers suspected in the case. But then city prosecutor Charles Marsden wasn't able to secure an indictment. Corneal said the grand jury proceedings were a waste of time, and he contends the push to go after an officer was all due to intense public pressure for an arrest. And I remember that too. They wanted to find out who the hell killed Lisa Au at that time. They had formulated premature conclusions, Corneal said, adding they jumped on any clue that pointed to the police officer's involvement. Au's temporary license was missing from her purse, and her car window rolled down halfway, and in their minds meant that she was pulled over and had passed the license to the officers. That's why they suspected a policeman. Okay? After the suspected officer's name leaked out, another woman claimed from the windward side that that he also pulled her over and that he used blue lights on his unmarked car. So that's when they started believing it was a policeman. Now, the new details triggered widespread fear among women that a traffic stop could be deadly. The department even sought to reassure women that they didn't have to stop for unmarked police cars, and eventually HPD banned flashing lights on car grills altogether, and I do remember that clearly. Like I said, my brother-in-law was a policeman at that time. In the meantime, investigators continued their focus on the police officer. Now, the primary pieces of evidence against him, the Windward Oahu woman's suspicious traffic stop, and a sex harassment complaint against him from a young woman during a police ride-along. And he also lived near Au's home. When the grand jury failed to indict the officer, Corneal says, it tainted the case, exposed mistakes that detectives had made, and that discouraged other prosecutors from trying again. Okay? And to this day, many still believe it was a police officer who killed Au. I don't think so, but that's what some people believe. Corneal argues that a shoddy investigation closed the door on evidence against others. Trying to get answers for the family, Corneal started his investigation over. He interviewed witnesses that he says detectives failed to track down or simply ignored. And he also found evidence that seemed to debunk the killer cop theory. Okay, so now remember Au's missing temporary driver's license? Its absence was an important clue that a police officer stopped Au that night. However, Corneal found it months later while retracing Lisa's movements. Turns out, after she left the hair salon about 9:45 and stopped to buy poke, she showed her ID to write a check. So she wrote a check to buy the poke and forgot it, and would forget it at the store. So she left it at the store. Okay? Why they didn't find that in the beginning of the investigation is beyond me. After Corneal's discovery, the ID was turned over to the police. Corneal says he knew then that Lisa was not pulled over by an officer. So that's debunked the police, that a police officer killed her. He also found a security guard at the Makiki apartment building where Doug Holmes' sister lived. Okay, that was at 1717 Mott Smith Drive, and where Lisa Au was last seen alive. Thomas Thornburg, that was a security guard, had not been contacted by the police until after Corneal interviewed him. He told police he saw the couple arguing about 11 p.m. And Thornburg reported that Holmes then drove off after Lisa left. Holmes had told police he'd gone back to his UH dorm. Okay, that's what he told police. Whether they did or not, who knows. Cornell also tracked down another witness, Charlotte Kamaka, a newspaper delivery driver. Okay? And this is on Tantalus now. She later testified before the grand jury about what she saw in Tantalus in the hours after Al went missing. She said she was on a regular route about 2:30 a.m. in the morning. And in police records, she said a man drove past her in a blue car with a female passenger who appeared to be asleep or unconscious. Now, what alerted me was her head fell, she said. When the car made the turn, her head just fell. Later, she said she got a good look at the driver as he turned around in a paved lookout. She said when the car made the turn, he just stopped and stared at her. Okay, so that's what she said. So, that's why didn't pursue that lead. I don't know. That's another screw up, I think, on the police department's part. They should have showed her. I'm not even sure if they showed her pictures of Doug Holmes and see, because a blue car, he drove a blue car. Anyway, I'm getting off of it now. But now the female passenger was gone. After Al's body was found in the same area 10 days later, Kamaka went to the police station to report what she saw. Okay, she said the detective wrote down information on how to contact her, but she never got a call back. She kept contacting the police anyway to see what they were doing. Her questions went nowhere. The thing about it is, she saw this guy in a blue car, and that was about the time that Lisa Al was killed. That was 10 days earlier. So you got to look at the timing of when she saw this person in the blue car. It's the same time that she was killed. That's why I cannot understand why I didn't pursue this. No. Anyway, one key clue in the case was Al's car, which broke down in Maunawili near a mudslide that happened during torrential rains. Officer Michael Rayfelt was directing traffic and says he didn't remember seeing Al's Toyota. But months later, he was asked to tell the grand jury that he did and report that he saw a patrol officer at the car. Rayfelt said he refused to lie and never testified. So they told him to lie. Can you imagine? Sheesh, unbelievable. So by 1985, 3 years after Al's death, the lead detective on the case, Nelson Lumb, wrote in a sworn statement that his massive and extensive investigation into Al's death had produced no evidence against a city employee acting within the course of their employment. In other words, a police officer didn't kill Al. The admission showed HPD's lead suspect in the case for years was an innocent man. Lumbs also said there was actually no direct evidence as to who caused the death of Lisa Al, but he said that there were one or more suspects in the case. Now, in a recorded interview, Al's boyfriend, Holmes, acknowledged that he knew he was one of the suspects. Court documents show Holmes even agreed to 2 lie detector tests and failed both. He probably knew that lie detector tests are inadmissible as evidence in a court of law. So whether you fail it, pass it, doesn't matter. He had an explanation that he felt guilty, and what it was that he felt guilty for, because he knew that she just got her license and she wasn't a good driver, and he wanted to drive her home. So that's the guilt that he felt. And in a sworn statement, Lum said that explanation was good enough for him and he didn't have any other reason to suspect Holmes. Yeah, what about the scratches on his face? And what about the newspaper witness? Jeez. As part of a lawsuit filed years after Owl's death, Lum was deposed and asked why other suspects weren't looked at more closely. Lum said he did question Holmes about the results of the lie detector, asking him, why are you failing these tests? Okay, so he did ask him. Now, Holmes' response, according to Lum, because he felt guilty for not driving Al home in the heavy rain because she was an inexperienced driver. And later Lum said he didn't think Holmes had any motive to kill Al because there was no third party involved, which ruled out jealousy. And there was no money involved, there was no baby coming, there was no reason for him to do it. But Lum said Holmes admitted he was trying to end the relationship, saying he was going to college, being educated, while Al was more or less staying still education-wise. Okay, so he's pretty much saying that there's really no motive. 7 years after Al's murder, Lum described the case as open, ongoing, and unsolved. That description remains today. More than a year after Lisa Al was killed, her body was exhumed. Police took her skull and jawbone and asked the coroner in Los Angeles to do what Honolulu's medical examiner could not do, to determine the cause of death. Forensic anthropologist Robert Mann of the University of Hawaii said a human skull can provide so many clues, but a less experienced examiner could easily miss the signs. Okay, so that's what he said. Now, there's so much that you can tell from the skull that you can't tell from the neck down, said Mann, who helped to analyze remains of those killed in the September 11th attacks and examine the remains of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. If you miss that one little mark, that one little indicator of possibly cause of death, you're gonna go, we don't have any evidence of what this person died. But it's there, so you have to be very careful. Okay. By the time Al's body was exhumed, Cornell, the homicide detective, he had left the police department and was working as a private investigator for the Al family. He believed the Honolulu coroner did not do a thorough job on the first autopsy. Oh yeah. And he was right. When the body was exhumed, investigators learned her remains were still in the police body bag. Can you imagine? Jeez. He was also appalled to learn that there were still leaves and dirt and rubbish inside. You know, he says the body was never even washed. You're supposed to wash the body. I can't believe that they screwed up so badly. Cornell's report says the medical examiner was pretty red-faced and embarrassed when all those details were revealed. A second opinion was sought by the Los Angeles coroner, who took a look at the skull and jawbone. The results of that exam were never made public, but the coroner did say that advanced decomposition meant making any conclusions would be very difficult. Mann of the University of Hawaii said he'd be willing to take another look, that is, if he could have access. Okay, but there's a problem with that now. The problem is there's some dispute where the skull and jawbone are now. The Honolulu Police Department says they're in the hands of the medical examiner's office, but the ME says they were returned to the casket with the rest of the remains. So, Al's family wonders if the items were indeed returned. The only way to be sure again would disturb her grave again. So they'd have to dig her up again. Despite that painful process, Al's family will ask HPD to do it again and re-examine her remains. They want to know if time, technology, and better skilled forensic anthropologists can finally determine how she died. Now, her sister As May Lee McIntyre says, any answers at this point would be a relief. May Lee was just 7 years old in 1982 when her big sister went missing. Okay, now the case, and what she said was, that I saw a lot of flyers with my sister's face, a graduation picture, black and white, and then it said the word missing. McIntyre said, for days she stayed with relatives until her sister's body was found. I was brought home, and that's when my mom and dad took me in the room. My parents told me that she went to heaven, McIntyre said. The two were 12 years apart, but McIntyre has fond memories of her sister. In the years after Al's death, the family sheltered McIntyre from all the news reports and the gruesome details, but she saw the ripple effects and impact on the family. It was hard on my parents. I watched it, she said. Whenever it came up to Lisa's birthday or the anniversary of her death or somewhere, you could tell. Over the years, McIntyre and her aunt would visit Al's grave site at the Valley of the Temples, cleaning it and leaving a lay. Next to Al, her father, Chester, is now buried, and her mother is buried at Hawaiian Memorial Park. The two divorced in 1990, and McIntyre says her sister's murder drove them apart. Now, when McIntyre became a teenager, she began reading the old newspaper clippings that her mom saved, and she started asking questions. She learned that a policeman was suspected, and then cleared, and that he wasn't the only suspect. Now, almost 4 decades later, she's asking HPD to take one last look. I want to know, and I want them to try again, she said, and if cannot. At least we tried. I want to try. There is no statute of limitations on murder, but the longer it takes for law enforcement to gather evidence, the harder it is for the case to move forward. Okay. The case weakens as time passes and witnesses die. Kamaka, the longtime newspaper carrier who reported suspicious activity on Tantalus the night Al went missing, died a year and a half ago at the age of 73. Thornburg, the security guard at the apartment complex where Al was last seen, has also died. He is buried at Punchbowl. But others are still around, including the officer who was initially targeted as a suspect was never indicted, and the lead detective is still living on Oahu's windward side. He declined a request to comment on this report. Now, the retired officer who says he was asked to lie to the grand jury says he would be willing to cooperate with any future investigation. And Cornell, who has spent years investigating the case, says he would return to Hawaii from Florida to assist in any way he can. Meanwhile, Holmes, Al's former boyfriend, has been living in Australia. Okay, he attended UH and then a college in Melbourne where he remains. He's an executive in an investment firm. This is what May Lee said. She said, my parents are gone and they know what happened now. May Lee McIntyre said, now just the living want to know. A lot of our family and our friends close to us want to know. Will law enforcement try again? Well, folks, there's the police really botched this one. First of all, the scratches on the boyfriend's face. That's a red flag. How did he get the scratches? And the timing of when that newspaper carrier, when she saw the guy in a blue car, and that was the same day, same night that Lisa Al was killed, that she saw that blue car drive up. And it's just that, I don't know, it all points to the boyfriend. The only thing that really I cannot really pinpoint is the motive That's the hardest. Why would he kill her? And why would she be naked? Yeah, but then unless he's sadistic or, but all the little circumstantial evidence is all pointing towards him. But I guess there is not enough to convict him. But I have a strong feeling it was Doug Holmes. That's my opinion. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And ahoy ho!